Hello everyone, buenos dias. I'm Chef Ricardo from Wellness in the Schools. We like to call ourselves WITS. Today I'm coming to you from my kitchen once more for another episode of our educational series, A Bite of Wellness. Today, I'll be talking about grains and how they can be incorporated into your healthy pantry. I'll also share a simple recipe for you to try at home.
But before we get cooking, it's important for every cook to be mindful of safety, regardless of whether you're a student in one of our cooking classes or whether you're a professional chef. The following tips come from my partner in health, Chef Rebecca of Wellness in the Schools, and they're focused towards new cooks of all ages.
Hello, I'm Chef Rebecca from Wellness in the Schools. We call ourselves WITS. Today's WITS Bit is about safety in the kitchen. I am so happy you could join me to learn how to keep yourself and others safe while cooking. The first thing you need to know about safety in the kitchen as a kid is to always ask for an adult's permission before cooking. Adults have experience and can protect you from making mistakes that could be harmful to you and others. Again, and I repeat, always ask permission before doing any cooking in the kitchen. That doesn't mean they will take over if you are worried about that. You can still do all the work while they keep you safe. The next thing to know about safety in the kitchen is cleanliness. Washing hands with soap and water for 20 seconds before touching food and equipment is part of how you get ready to cook. You don't want anything you've been touching to get into the food you are cooking. Keeping a sanitizing rag nearby to wipe up spills and to keep your cooking area clean is a regular practice of good chefs, and it can spare you from drips on the floor, which turn into slips on the floor. Cleaning spills and messes as you go not only prevents slips and falls, but it makes cleaning easier when you are done cooking. Chefs wear standard uniforms, including the right shoes that prevent slips in case there are greasy or wet areas on the floor. Now, on to our equipment. Here is some standard cooking equipment you may have at home and some others you may not. Knowing your equipment is an important step in making great food. Utensils like knives are sharp and can not only cut food, but can cut you. Use the bear claw and the right knife for your skill level.
Here are 3 different knives. Which one do you think is for adults and which is for kids like you? If you chose these, you are correct. These knives will cut almost anything except you.
Another sharp but often used kitchen utensil is a peeler. Peelers remove the skin from certain foods with tough outer skin like potatoes and carrots or even cucumbers or zucchini. Peelers are fun to use but can be dangerous. They look quite different from a knife, but it is a blade and will cut you. One of the things I like about peelers is making shreds for salads. Here is a whisk used for mixing sauces and batters, and a spatula for picking up hot items in a pan. These are measuring cups, but a coffee or tea cup will work too. These are measuring spoons, but you can also use a tea or tablespoon. For heating foods, you might use a stove, a hot plate, or a microwave. Using heat is dangerous because it can burn you or start a fire. When picking up hot kitchenware, remind everyone to use an oven mitt, a pot holder, or even a rag. Trying to handle hot pots and or plates is tricky and can cause you to lose all of your hard work onto the floor and in the garbage. And it can cause serious burns that prevent you from cooking in the future. Equipment with cords and electricity can also catch on fire, including a microwave oven. So never use storage containers, metal, thin one-use plastic, or styrofoam. Put your food in a bowl or on a plate, then cover it with a paper towel or a microwave cover. When you see chef words like cut, chop, blend, grate, saute, heat, or preheat in a recipe, stop. Go no further, because that is the time to get an adult for help. Wow. I am sure that you agree. There are a lot of things you need to know to be safe while cooking at home. Thanks for joining me for this WITS Bit on learning safety in the kitchen at home. I'm Chef Rebecca, and I will see you next time.
Let's talk about grains. Grains are small dried seeds that sometimes come with their outer coatings attached. More on that in just a moment. They mainly contain a large amount of starch, a carbohydrate that provides our body with energy. They come in many different sizes and shapes and can be used in many different recipes, both savory and sweet. Grains can come in either a whole or refined form. Whole grains refers to how the grain is found in nature, where the outer hull of the grain is left intact. A refined grain has been processed after harvest to remove the outer parts of the grain. While removing the outer hull of a grain can make it more appealing to taste and quicker to cook, refined grains tend to lack the vitamin and fiber content of their whole grain counterparts. In fact, if you ever see the word enriched on a package of grains, that means that the manufacturer has added artificial vitamins back onto the grain to make up for what was lost during processing. Grains are an important staple for a pantry since they have a very, very long shelf life. An uncooked grain can be kept in a dry and cool condition for about a year or so, and processed grains like white rice can last for longer. Cooked grains can also be stored frozen in a freezer for a couple of months without too much impact on their quality. The most popular grain in America, wheat, is used to make breads and pastas. You'll have most likely used this if you've ever made a cake or if you've ever made cookies. Wheat is ground up very finely in a mill to make flour. But there are a wide variety of other grains that we can choose to include on our plates. The following are some examples of grains you may encounter in the supermarket. Rice is the most popular form of grain worldwide. Did you know that it provides up to half the calorie intake for half of the world's population? White rice is less nutritious since the bran and the germ of the rice seed are removed during milling. It gets its appearance from being polished and can sometimes be processed further to aid cooking. Always check your labels to see what the cooking time should be. Whole grain rice retains the nutrients that are removed during milling to make white rice. It's usually brown colored, as you can see here, but can also come black, red, or purple. Here we have farro and wheat berries, two grains that look somewhat similar but have a couple of differences. Farro is actually an ancient relative of the wheat we commonly encounter in breads and pastas. It's high in iron and protein. Compared to eating processed wheat, its fiber content can help reduce the risk of type 2 diabetes, high blood pressure, and heart disease. Wheat berries are actually the polished kernels of the same wheat that is used to make flour. It originated in early cooking as a precursor to modern pasta. It's high in fiber, protein, and minerals. Here we have cornmeal. Did you know that while we treat corn as a vegetable, it's actually classified as a grain? When corn is dried and ground up in a mill, it makes a fine, slightly sweet flour. It contains more vitamin A than any other grain, which is important for eye health. Here we have quinoa. This whole grain originated in the Andes Mountains of South America. It's high in fiber. More notably, quinoa is a complete source of protein. What that means is that unlike other grains, quinoa does not have to be paired with a legume like beans or lentils to fully meet our protein needs. As for couscous, this grain originated in North Africa. While this product is actually a form of pasta, couscous is so small that it could be used in the same way that you would use grains. For today's recipe, I will show you how to prepare a sofrito brown rice. Sofrito is a sauce base that's commonly used in Latin American, Spanish, and Portuguese cooking. While the ingredients differ in between cuisines and even in between families, it generally features aromatic or flavorful ingredients that are cut into small pieces and then sautéed in oil. This sofrito will be used to season our rice, but you could also use it to add a deep, rich flavor to stews. And now we're ready to cook. Here, I've taken the liberty of washing all of our vegetables ahead of time and sorting it out so you could see it all laid out in one place. Every single culture does their sofrito a little differently dependent on the ingredients that are traditionally featured in that culture. For ours here, I've got green bell peppers, orange bell peppers, a red onion, some yellow onions, a head of garlic, some lemons, cilantro, and a little bit of parsley. I've got more cilantro than parsley here. First, we're going to take one head of garlic. I'm going to just peel off the skin here first. Once you have your garlic peeled, the next thing that you're going to want to do is just roughly chop it. You don't have to go too small. The blender's going to do the work for us later. You just want to get it small enough that it's going to release all of that flavor when we finally cook this. Next, we're going to take our onion and cut it into small dice. To do that first, we're going to cut off the top. And we're going to take our onion and cut that in half. This makes it a lot easier to peel. Once you have your onion peeled, go ahead and take both sides and put them down flat side first. With your knife, and this is to be done very carefully, we're going to cut into it just like this. I keep my hand right on top with my fingers curled up nice and tight into a bear claw. I'm going to push in and away from myself just a little bit. And I'm not going to cut all the way through the onion. There's one layer. I'm going all the way up to where the root of the bulb is on the onion, and that bulb root is going to hold everything together for me. Once I've done those vertical cuts, I'm going to turn my onion around, and I'm going to go ahead and cut once again into the onion, not all the way up to the bulb and the root. Now that I've got all my cuts like that, I'm going to take my onion, turn it around, and for our last cut, this is where we start to form small dice. And this time, cut almost all the way up to the root, and that is the only bit of waste that we have out of that entire onion. Next, we're going to cut up our bell peppers. It's the same procedure regardless of the color. We're going to take our bell peppers and cut them into small dice. To do that, we're going to take our knife, using the bear claw, we're going to cut into the top and just cut straight through. I'm going to pull out the seeds from inside here, and that'll go in my little wastebasket. You can also peel off a little bit of the pith, or when you've got this broken down later, you can just cut it off with your knife. I'm going to cut off the tops right over here, because that's still perfectly usable. And now, to cut into small dice, what you're going to want to do is just cut into little strips, turn it around kind of like our onion, and then cut little pieces out from here. This is a little rounded and it's not perfectly diced, but the shape is close enough. The important thing when you're cutting into dice like this is to always have everything the same size. And so when I'm cutting into my pepper here, I would just like to trim out a little bit of that white part, the pith, right there. I'm going to cut into little strips. Once again, line it up. Let me move this out of the way. And now, using my bear claw, I'm going to hold everything down so nothing slips and cut my dice from there. And there's our whole pepper cut into small dice. Next, we're going to juice our lemons. You're going to take your lemon, and once it's rinsed, you're going to roll it on the cutting board. And what that actually does is that breaks down the fibers inside the lemon and makes it a lot juicier. Once it's rolled decently, you're going to take your knife, using the bear claw once again, and just cut your lemon in half. Now, when you are juicing a lemon, what you could do if you don't have a regular style juicer is to take a fork and squeeze the insides out into a bowl to catch all the liquid. To make life a little easier, I have a little lemon press here, citrus squeezer I should say, that I'm going to pop my lemon into and then squeeze very hard to get all the juice out. For our recipe, we're going to want to squeeze 2 lemons. Next, we're going to prepare our parsley. To prepare our parsley, what we're going to do is just de-stem the parsley. Or in other words, rip the stems off from the leaves. We're only using the leaves for making our sofrito today. If you wanted to, you could take the stems and reserve them to put into your own stock at home if you make it from scratch. They've still got a lot of extra flavor, but the texture isn't quite what we're looking for in our sofrito, so I'll leave those out. Once you've got everything destemmed, just like our garlic, we're going to take our knife and roughly chop our herb. Last but not least, we'll prepare our cilantro. Since the stems are thin enough, we can leave them on. What you'll want to do is just trim off a little bit here. That can go in our waste bucket. And we're just going to roughly chop these just like I've chopped my parsley and garlic. And we're using considerably more cilantro than parsley. Normally at home, we don't use parsley in our sofrito at all. However, I wanted to show you one particular way of making it, just in case there's a limited amount of cilantro in the stores. Both of these are very, very good for your bone health, too. And you don't have to make it too small. Whatever size you get it to currently, the blender will do the rest and break it down for us later. Last but not least, as a safety note, you've probably noticed that every time I finish using my knife, I've always tucked it into my cutting board a little bit. This will prevent it from slipping when you're not right in front of your station. And now, as you can see right here, here's everything cut up and ready to cook. This layout is what us chefs call mise en place. That's French for everything in place. I think we're ready to start cooking on the stove now. To begin preparing our sofrito, the first thing we're going to want to do is take a large pan and put it over medium heat. Next, we're going to pour olive oil into the pan. I've got half a cup of olive oil here. I'm going to pour it in, and we're going to let it heat for about 1 minute or so, or until it's fragrant. When you can start to smell your olive oil, and when you can start to see it shimmering just a little bit on the top, it's ready for the next step. For our next step, what we're going to do is add our onions, our garlic, and our peppers. Let me move that around a little bit. This is going to cook down a little bit once the heat gets to it. Of course, if you've got too much crowded in here, what you can do is always take your setup and split it amongst 2 pans. I will just take 1 second to do that right now. Now, I've got my onions, peppers, and garlic all split up between 2 pans. I'm going to let this sit for a couple of minutes. We want it to get hot and cook for about 4 to 5 minutes. So, what you're going to be looking for is to see when your vegetables are softened. You don't want the vegetables to brown or burn. That would make for a very sad sofrito. While we've got the base of our sofrito cooking, the next thing that we're going to want to do is add a little flavor to it. I've got a little bit of salt here, and I'm going to take 1 teaspoon of salt and split it up amongst the 2 pans. As we add in the salt, that'll draw out the liquids from the onion and from the peppers and just add to the flavor. It's always important to season in layers while you're cooking. Next, I'll add in a little bit of black pepper as well. I've got a pepper mill here, but if you've got black pepper already ground up in a container, that'll work just fine too. You're going to want to add about a 1/4 teaspoon to each pan here. That makes for half a teaspoon in the whole recipe. Once you've got that in, go ahead and stir it up. It's been about 4 or 5 minutes. Our peppers and onions are a little bit softer right now, and I wish you were here to smell it. Our next step is going to be to add in our parsley, cilantro, and lemon juice. And we're going to do this more or less roughly evenly. It's all going to come together in the end regardless. A little bit here, a little bit there. And we'll take our lemon juice and split it evenly. Now we're going to take this, stir it, and then we're going to let it cook for a couple more minutes just so all of those new flavors can meld in with the peppers, garlic, and onion. Alright, now we've got our sofrito cooling down, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to blend it in stages. What you're going to do, if you're doing this in a rush, is to break down the sofrito into smaller containers so it can cool a little faster. But once you've got it ready, put it into your blender or food processor at home if you have one, and blend it until it's reached the desired consistency. Usually at home here, we like to take our sofrito and blend it to a puree. But if you want to carry over some of the texture from the other ingredients, what you're going to want to do is just blend a little less and blend a little bit at a time until you reach your desired consistency. Last but not least, you're going to want to separate your sofrito into small containers for storage in the refrigerator or freezer. We usually like to use these plastic takeout containers to store our sofrito. If you keep it in the fridge, it will last for up to a week. However, if you put it in the freezer, it could last up to 3 months. What we recommend doing is using an ice cube tray. That way you can have individualized portions of sofrito ready for any recipe that just needs a little kick of sazon. Many of our communities are familiar with cooking rice, and we typically tend to do that on the stovetop. However, I want to show you a different way of preparing a sofrito brown rice today, and that would be to put it into the oven. The oven actually allows for even cooking, and it allows you to prepare a lot of rice at one time, perfect for sending a little bit of love in the form of food to your friends and family who are social distancing. The first thing that you're going to want to do, though, is to take your oven and turn it on to 375 degrees Fahrenheit. Next, I've got my water boiling here for our rice. Remember to always look at your package instructions to see how much water the rice to use. What I'm going to do with this as well, now that it's about boiling, is I'm going to add my sofrito to my boiling water. What this will do is it'll turn into a little sofrito mix, and we're going to take this water and incorporate it with the brown rice. This allows for us to evenly season all parts of the rice, since the sofrito and all of the seasoning that it's got inside is spread evenly amongst the water. So I will take that, I'm going to lower this down just a little bit, and using a spoon very carefully, I'm going to pour this in. Now you're going to want to go ahead and mix that up fairly well so that the flavoring is evenly dispersed. Leave no drop behind. Alright, while our oven is preheating, I've taken some water and got it set up. It's coming up to a boil, and we'll use that for our rice. In the meanwhile though, I've taken a rice and I've already rinsed it. I'm using 2 cups of brown rice, as you can see here in the colander. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this rice and I'm going to put it straight into a pan. There's no oil or anything on my pan. And what I'm going to do is do a dry roast of our rice. This will help to dry it off after rinsing. But what it's also going to do is impart a nutty flavor onto our rice. You don't want to go for too long when you're doing this. You just want to dry your rice up a little bit over high heat in a clean pan with no oil inside. You want to constantly agitate the rice so that it doesn't stick to the pan and burn. But this will only take a couple of minutes, and you'll know that it's finished when you're able to smell a nutty fragrance coming from your rice. Appearance-wise, it shouldn't change too much. And we'll let that go for a minute more. Our sofrito mix is boiling right now, and I've taken our toasted rice and I've put it into my baking pan. The next thing that I'm going to do is take the sofrito liquid, our sofrito water mixture, and combine it with our rice. And it might look like a lot of liquid, but that rice is going to absorb it when it goes into the oven. You're going to want to stir this just a little bit to evenly incorporate the sofrito with the brown rice. And if it looks like it's a little too much water in there, that's not a worry as well either. What a lot of people don't recognize that you could do with rice is strain out the excess water after cooking, kind of like pasta. Lastly, right before we put this into the oven, we're going to seal it shut. I've taken some parchment paper and put it over my pan, and the next thing I'm going to do is put a little aluminum foil on top. This way the aluminum isn't touching the rice directly, and it forms a really nice seal that's perfect for trapping in all the steam that we're going to need to cook our rice properly. You want to crimp the edges as you're going around just to make sure that that seal is nice and tight. If the seal is not tight, unfortunately, that means that the rice won't cook as evenly or as quickly. I think that that should do it. Last but not least, we're going to take our prepared baking pan of rice and sofrito, and we're going to put that into the oven. Alright, It's been about 40 minutes or so, and I'm going to check to see if our brown rice is prepared. To do that, I'm going to pop open the oven. I wish you were here to smell that. And I'm going to pull out my tray. Very carefully, because this is still very, very hot, I'm going to just undo the seal on my brown rice pan. And you can probably see the steam that's coming out right there. It always helps if you undo the seal a little bit, just so you're not hit with a sofrito facial. But as I look in, my rice needs just a little more time. It's bubbling up right now, and it is almost there. What you can do is take a spoon to gently push to the side to see if the liquid has been absorbed, and right now, we're not quite there just yet. So I'll put this back in, cover it up, and we'll let it keep on cooking until it's just ready. Alright, and we're back. I've let our rice cook for another 10 minutes or so, and now I'm going to pull it out to check if it's done. And we'll put that right up here. Once again, you want to be careful when you're opening up the rice. Always open the corner that's facing away from you so that any steam comes out that way and you're not getting that sofrito facial. Now that I've opened this up, let me bring this over so you can take a look. The easiest way to check if your rice is done, besides tasting it of course, is to take a spoon once more and push the ingredients onto the side. And when I look at the very bottom here, you can't see it right from over there, but when I look at the very bottom, I notice that there's no liquid at the bottom of my pan. And that means that all the liquid has been absorbed by the rice. Last thing to do, we'll just have to taste it. And I always take the mother spoon, get a little portion there. You never want to double dip. Now, because we're cooking with brown rice, what we're going to be looking for is a slightly chewy texture. And I think that that's pretty good. This rice can be paired with any type of cooked bean and is great alongside stir fries, stews, and cooked vegetables. I hope you've all found this advice and cooking demonstration to be helpful as you prepare to feed yourself and your loved ones. Stay tuned to the following episode where we'll share more tips and suggestions about food, health, and wellness. Cocinaremos a pesar de esta presente situación. We will all cook through this together.